Hello! This week I'm going to be going over my progress on my HIMI Gouache challenge. It's been a while since I've done an update on my progress, how much gouache I've used, how much I still have left to go, as well as what I've been painting in my sketchbook, which I will show you along and along. Also, I'm going to talk about any regrets I have with starting this challenge. And while I chit-chat about all that, I think I'm going to do a Halloween-inspired painting. So for anyone who's been following along with my gouache journey, it is no secret that I really hate using gouache for the most part. I can appreciate the idea of gouache, but I think that personally it's just not for me. I would much rather use watercolor or acrylic paint, even color pencils, and I'm not really a big fan on color pencils. But I do get the appeal to gouache. And I also like the final result when you finish a gouache painting. It usually looks really good. My problem with it is that the process of getting to that final stage is too frustrating for me. The last thing I want is to be frustrated while I'm trying to paint and do something that I love. And it's weird because certain times painting with gouache isn't as frustrating as others. I think a lot of that has to do with my skill level. I'm definitely still learning the do's and don'ts. For instance, this painting that I'm doing right now, I've kind of learned at this point that you have to start off with a really thin, watered down layer and then slowly build up from there. And getting the consistency of the gouache to where it's not too thick is definitely more of a challenge to me because I feel like I want to put more on so that it'll get a smoother finish and I won't have like a streaky watered down finish. But the problem is you have to build it up to that smoothness, which is also why it's so frustrating to me. Because with acrylic, you can just put it down and it's not really going to change as it dries, except for maybe the lightness and darkness of the color. But the overall smoothness of acrylic paint is not going to change. Whereas with gouache, when you put it down, it could look really smooth and even, but then as it dries, it could really dry uneven and streaky, which is another thing that's really frustrating. I don't mean to talk about all the negative things about gouache. It's just I just find it so strange, especially because I see so many people using gouache and really enjoying or at least coming off as they enjoy using it and painting these beautiful things. And I feel like part of the reason why I started this challenge was to learn gouache as well as use the gouache because I didn't want to waste the paint. And I have learned a little bit, not as much as I would like to, but at the same time, I started to notice the more I painted with it consistently, the more my way of painting would change when I would go back to acrylic paint. So I would get used to the way that gouache behaves, and then when I would try to go back and paint with acrylic, it's like I would paint the same way and it started affecting the way that I liked painting with acrylic. And I've definitely noticed this with other things that I've done. If I use a certain thing, like if I do palette knife painting, when I switch back to using brushes, it's almost like there's a slight learning curve again, where I have to like unlearn what I've been doing and then relearn. It's almost like you get kind of rusty. So that's another reason why it's been a little time since my last gouache challenge video, because I started noticing it was affecting my work, and so it kind of freaked me out and I stopped using it. And I'm glad that I'm doing this challenge. So it's not like I regret starting this challenge, but I do kind of regret the way that I went about it. I was like super excited about it. I was like, I'm going to paint with gouache until the whole thing's done. It's going to be great. And it's going to be like power through the gouache and keep going until it's all done. It definitely made me burn out very quickly. I kind of set my paints aside and I didn't paint with them for a while. And then randomly, I just kind of felt like using them. it had been a minute since I had painted with them, so I was like, well, I should just get them out and just paint anything. It didn't really matter. I just needed to get used to using them again. And I filmed that. So on the left side, I just kind of started putting in some of these orange colors and red colors because there's so much in the palette that needs to be used. So I just kind of started putting those down, and then it made me think of fall because the seasons were changing and it felt so nice outside. So I just kind of loosely tried to paint some leaves. I wasn't trying to be perfect with it or anything. And then on the right, I just kind of painted a little intuitively. I've been doing a lot of intuitive painting lately, which has been a lot of fun because you don't have to like plan out what you're going to do and worry about how it's going to look. You just kind of go with the flow, and whatever you paint, you end up painting. And it's been a lot more fun that way, I think. It reminded me of like underwater. I played around with some coral color and the light shining down through the water. And it kind of reminded me of a fish tank and those little sculptures that are in the bottom of fish tanks. So I painted a little scuba guy. Well, I guess he's not a scuba guy. What is that called? A deep sea diver guy? And it was just a lot of fun to paint. I like how it turned out. It was very relaxed. I didn't even know if I was going to post this video because, like I said, I was just trying to get back into the rhythm of using it. And I actually really like how it looks. So I left it at that, and I definitely felt like I needed some more practice. And I was trying to figure out how I could paint that I would enjoy the process better. I felt like maybe I was trying too hard. So one night I was watching Beetlejuice, and while I was watching Beetlejuice, I got my paints out and I set everything up and just kind of freely did it while I was watching it. And I painted a picture of my dog that I had on my phone, which is right here on the left. Again, very imperfect, but I kind of liked the cool colors that I chose and everything. Then I had realized it had been a while since I kind of painted a landscape with just some trees, and I wanted to play around with the backlighting. So I started out with a really light color in the background and then tried to build on top of it to create kind of a glowing effect, and I think it turned out pretty good. And at this point, I'm definitely using a lot of gouache out of this set. I'm no longer trying to use it sparingly. In my first gouache challenge video, I was talking about how I was going to use all the paint up that was on this little mixing palette because I didn't want to waste a single drop. And while I still don't like to waste paint, I'm definitely not that worried about it anymore. Mostly because at this point, I kind of know that gouache is just not for me. So in the long run, I don't think I'll ever be buying any more gouache, except maybe like a tube of white to use with watercolor. I would much rather stick with acrylic paint, which I know I love and I love using, or just trying something different. There's so many mediums out there to try and use. And I think that trying to force myself to like something is kind of the wrong way to go about art in general. I think some people are great at using gouache and they love using gouache. And those people might hate using acrylic paint, or they might hate using markers or pencils or oil paint. I mean, there's so many mediums out there. I think banging your head against the wall and trying to get yourself to like one medium is just a bad idea. So if you take anything away from my HIMI Gouache Challenge videos, I would say, first off, you have to try things out for yourself and decide for yourself. I can show you the pros and cons that I've come across, as well as other people can show you how beautiful and easy they can paint things with gouache. But ultimately, you have to try it for yourself and figure out if you like it or not. And I think I've definitely given gouache a fair shake. You know, I've used it several times now. It's not like I tried it once and never went back, even though I definitely felt like never using it again. But I think that I'm just going to keep using it along and along, just whenever I feel like I want to play around in my sketchbook not take it too seriously. And it's funny, whenever I get the itch to use gouache, I tend to do several pages at a time. So I'll probably go a little while without painting in it, and then I'll do 5 pages or more. So if you've enjoyed watching my gouache challenge and you want to make sure you see the next time I come out with one of these videos, I would consider subscribing. That way you'll have me bookmarked, and the next time I come out with a gouache video, you'll be able to find me easier. So anyway, just a thought. It's free, and if you would like to help me out, you can hit that thumbs up button. That lets me know and lets YouTube know that you enjoyed the video, and it really does help so much. But other than that, I'm pretty sure next week is going to be about my current art explosion of ideas that I've had. I have, I think, 8 canvas paintings started and like halfway through right now. Hopefully you can stick around for that, and I'll see y'all next time.